At its peak, it was the most powerful state the Western world had ever known. Its roads stretched from the sands of North Africa to the moors of northern Britain. Its laws governed the lives of 60 million people. Its legions had never tasted a defeat they could not recover from. For 5 centuries, Rome was not merely a city. It was an idea about order, about civilization, about what humanity could build when it organized itself with discipline and ambition. And then, over the course of another 3 centuries, that idea came apart. This is the story of how the greatest empire the ancient world produced fell. To understand the fall, we must first appreciate what there was to lose. At its height, in the 2nd century of the Common Era, the Roman Empire was a remarkable achievement of human organization. Rome's engineers built aqueducts that carried fresh water hundreds of kilometers into cities. Its legal system codified rights and obligations in ways that still echo in the laws of Europe and the Americas today. Its roads, straight, stone-paved, enduring, allowed armies, merchants, and ideas to move with unprecedented speed. The emperors of the 2nd century, figures like Trajan, Hadrian, and Marcus Aurelius, presided over what the historian Edward Gibbon would later call the period in the history of the world during which the condition of the human race was most happy and prosperous. Gibbon wrote those words in the 18th century. He had already seen what came next. But even in Rome's golden age, the foundations were showing faint cracks. The empire was simply enormous. And enormity in the ancient world came with a cost. Defending borders that stretched over 10,000 kilometers required a permanent, professional army of hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Feeding that army, paying that army, supplying it across vast distances. All of this required money. Enormous, constant, unrelenting amounts of money. And the money had to come from somewhere. The Roman economy, impressive as it was, had limits. And those limits would, over time, become impossible to ignore. The first great shock arrived in the 3rd century. In the 50 years between 235 and 284 CE, the Roman Empire experienced something close to collapse. In that half-century, Rome had over 50 different emperors. Most of them were soldiers who seized power by force and died by force, assassinated by rivals, killed in battle, or simply abandoned by the armies that had raised them up. For a time, the empire itself fragmented, breaking into 3 competing states: the Gallic Empire in the west, the Palmyrene Empire in the east, and what remained of Central Roman authority in between. It was, by any measure, a catastrophe, and yet, Rome survived it. The Emperor Aurelian reunited the empire by force in the 270s. His successors, particularly Diocletian, introduced sweeping reforms that stabilized the currency, reorganized the army, and restructured how the empire was governed. Rome had pulled back from the edge, but the effort had cost something fundamental, something that would prove very difficult to recover: trust in the institution of empire itself. Diocletian's most significant reform was, in retrospect, also his most consequential. Recognizing that the empire was too vast for a single ruler to govern effectively, he divided authority among 4 co-rulers, a system known as the Tetrarchy. It was a practical solution to a practical problem, but it planted a seed. The idea that the Roman world could be divided, that East and West were, in some meaningful sense, separate entities, would take root and never fully die. And when Constantine the Great finally reunited the empire under a single ruler in the early 4th century, he made another choice that would reshape the Roman world forever. He converted to Christianity, and he moved his capital away from Rome itself to a new city in the east, a city he named, once again with characteristic modesty, after himself: Constantinople. Rome, the eternal city, the symbolic heart of the empire, was no longer its center of gravity. Beneath the drama of emperors and battles, a quieter crisis was unfolding, one measured not in armies, but in coins. To pay its soldiers and administrators, Rome had long relied on a stable silver currency, the denarius. But as military costs rose and tax revenues struggled to keep pace, emperors began debasing the coinage, reducing the silver content and increasing cheaper metals. The result was predictable. Prices rose. Confidence in the currency fell. Merchants began hoarding gold and silver. Trade contracted. The economic arteries of the empire began to harden. Farmers and craftsmen, squeezed by taxation and rising prices, abandoned their land and their trades. The tax base shrank, which meant even more pressure on those who remained. A cycle had begun that Rome would never fully escape. Rome did not exist in isolation. Beyond its northern frontiers, beyond the Rhine and the Danube, lay a world that Rome had never conquered and never fully understood. The Romans called them barbarians, from the Greek word for those who did not speak Greek. It was not, strictly speaking, a term of contempt. It simply meant outsider. These were not primitive peoples. They were organized, skilled, and increasingly militarized, and they had spent centuries watching Rome, learning from it, trading with it, and when the opportunity arose, raiding it. For much of Rome's history, the frontier had held, not without effort and not without cost, but it had held. In the 4th century, that equation began to change, and the reason lay far to the east, in the vast steppes of Central Asia. In approximately 370 CE, a nomadic people from the Asian steppes began moving westward with extraordinary force and speed. They were called the Huns. The Huns were formidable warriors, mounted archers of devastating skill, capable of striking and withdrawing before a conventional army could respond. They swept through the peoples of the Eastern European steppe like a storm. The Gothic peoples, the Visigoths and Ostrogoths, who had long lived in an uneasy peace with Rome on the Danube frontier, suddenly found themselves caught between the Huns behind them and the Roman Empire ahead. In 376 CE, hundreds of thousands of Visigoths appeared on the northern bank of the Danube and asked Rome for permission to cross, to enter the empire, to seek refuge within its borders. The Emperor Valens agreed. It seemed at the time like a manageable situation. The Goths could be settled, taxed, perhaps recruited into the Roman army. It would prove to be one of the most consequential decisions in the history of the ancient world. The settlement of the Visigoths within Roman territory quickly became a disaster. Roman officials exploited and mistreated the refugees. Hunger turned to desperation. Desperation turned to revolt. The Emperor Valens marched against the Visigoths at the town of Adrianople in modern-day Turkey. He was confident of victory. He was wrong. The Battle of Adrianople was one of the worst military defeats in Roman history. 2/3 of the Roman army was destroyed. The Emperor Valens himself was killed. His body never recovered. Rome had faced military disasters before and survived. But Adrianople was different. It demonstrated for the first time that the Roman army, the foundation of imperial power, could be decisively beaten on Roman soil. The frontier, once a line Rome controlled, had become a threshold Rome could no longer reliably defend. On the 24th of August, 410 CE, something happened that had not occurred in 800 years. Rome was sacked. The Visigoth king Alaric and his forces entered the Eternal City and plundered it for 3 days. They did not burn it to the ground. The sack was relatively restrained by ancient standards, but the psychological blow was immense. The philosopher Jerome, writing from Bethlehem, captured the mood of the age. The city that had conquered the world had been conquered. The shock reverberated across the entire Roman world and beyond. Rome would recover, in a physical sense, but the idea of Rome, the belief in its permanence, its invulnerability, had been shattered, and ideas once broken are very hard to reassemble. The 5th century in the Western Empire was a story of accelerating decline. A series of emperors, many of them children, many of them puppets of powerful military commanders, held the title of Augustus, while real power drained away to the generals who surrounded them. Province by province, the Western Empire contracted. Britain was abandoned to its own defenses in 410 CE. North Africa, the breadbasket of the Western Empire, fell to the Vandals in 439. Gaul and Spain became patchworks of Germanic kingdoms. By the 400s and 70s, the emperor in Ravenna, Rome itself was no longer even the Western capital, controlled little beyond Italy itself. In September of 476 CE, a Germanic chieftain named Odoacer, commanding a mercenary army that was now the effective military force of Italy, deposed the last Western Roman emperor. His name was Romulus Augustulus. He was, by most accounts, a teenager, and his name, Romulus, the legendary founder of Rome, Augustus, the title of Rome's first emperor, was a cruel irony that history would not let pass unnoticed. Odoacer did not even bother to proclaim himself emperor. He sent the imperial regalia, the purple robes, the diadem, to Constantinople and ruled Italy simply as a king. The Western Roman Empire was over, not with a battle, not with a great speech or a final stand, but with a quiet administrative act. A boy removed from a throne, robes sent east by post. Historians have argued about the fall of Rome for as long as there have been historians. Edward Gibbon, in his monumental 18th century work, blamed Christianity, arguing that it turned Roman energies inward towards salvation and away from the martial virtues that had built the empire. Others have pointed to economic failure, to political dysfunction, to the exhaustion of the soil, to disease. The Antonine Plague of the 2nd century killed millions. Modern scholars have added climate change, lead poisoning, and systemic inequality to the list. The honest answer is all of these things. Rome did not fall for one reason. It fell because a complex system, under pressure from many directions at once, gradually lost the capacity to hold itself together. That perhaps is the most important lesson Rome offers us. Great civilizations do not usually end in a single dramatic moment. They erode, slowly, incrementally, until one day, the things that once seemed permanent are simply gone. Historians have argued about the fall of Rome for as long as there have been historians. Edward Gibbon, in his monumental 18th century work, blamed Christianity, arguing that it turned Roman energies inward towards salvation and away from the martial virtues that had built the empire. Others have pointed to economic failure, to political dysfunction, to the exhaustion of the soil, to disease. The Antonine Plague of the 2nd century killed millions. Modern scholars have added climate change, lead poisoning, and systemic inequality to the list. The honest answer is all of these things. Rome did not fall for one reason. It fell because a complex system, under pressure from many directions at once, gradually lost the capacity to hold itself together. That perhaps is the most important lesson Rome offers us. Great civilizations do not usually end in a single dramatic moment. They erode, slowly, incrementally, until one day, the things that once seemed permanent are simply gone. And yet, something survived. The Eastern Roman Empire, centered on Constantinople, would endure for another 1,000 years, finally falling only in 1453. We call it the Byzantine Empire. It called itself Rome. Roman law survived, absorbed into the legal traditions of Europe. The Latin language survived, transforming over centuries into French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian. The Catholic Church preserved Roman administrative structures and the Latin tongue for 1,000 years of European history. And Rome itself, the city, survived, diminished, changed, sometimes barely recognizable, but there, still there. Standing among the ruins of the Forum today, it is easy to feel the weight of what was lost. Columns that once supported the roofs of senate houses and temples stand open to the sky. The stones that Roman senators walked upon are worn smooth by centuries of feet. But it is also possible to feel something else, not loss, but continuity. The road that Julius Caesar walked is still beneath your feet. The water that flows through Rome's fountains still arrives through channels the Romans designed. The idea of law, of citizenship, of a shared civic life, these are Roman ideas. Rome fell, but it never entirely disappeared. It dissolved slowly into the world it had shaped, into our languages, our laws, our cities, our very idea of what it means to live together in an organized society. The empire ended. The inheritance did not.